Hey, it's Nikki. Burlington Buzz covers the everyday life of our town, the people, the places, the things that make Burlington, Burlington. We don't usually talk about national politics, but the 6th Congressional District seat is open this year, and we thought you deserved a chance to hear directly from the people asking for your vote. This is one of a collection of conversations with the candidates running to represent Burlington in Congress. We hope you'll take the time to listen to all 7 conversations. Check the show notes for links to connect with each candidate directly. Now let's get to it. Hello. Welcome to Burlington Buzz on the mic. This is Nikki again, and I have Micah Jones here. Micah is a Republican candidate for the Congressional 6th District seat. Micah is the only Republican running, so Micah will be on the ballot in the September 1st primary, but also in November. Micah, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me on, Nikki, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Great. Well, why don't we start by just getting to know you a little bit? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my name's Micah Jones. My family and I live in Essex on Cape Ann, and I'm running for Congress because I deeply love the United States of America, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the greater communities of the North Shore and Merrimack Valley that make up the Massachusetts 6th Congressional District. Above all, and I say this as a young father, I have 2 little kids. My son's 3.5, my daughter's 7 months. My wife is a saint for letting me run in this moment, and I'm happy to highlight kind of the decision and our process of why I jumped in. But I say this as somebody who really has skin in the game. We have a mortgage and we feel the weight of federal, state, local regulations. And to me, this is a moment to be involved. I'm really worried how polarized our country is. I feel like in running for office, I want to lead by example, really try to turn the temperature down of our politics and do the best to make the Mass 6 the best place for not only my family, but everybody's family.
Wonderful. Well, so because you're the only Republican running, you have this unique, I don't even want to call it a challenge. You have the benefit of really being able to speak to every voter now rather than kind of battling it out with other Republican candidates ahead of the primary. What's your sort of lane to reach voters that are both Republican voters and also potential Democrat or independent voters that may, find that your message resonates?
No, thank you, Nikki. And to me, that was a huge part in wanting to run in this moment. And as you and I kind of were talking before we started recording, just for the folks listening, again, this is an open seat. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time the seat's been open in 47 years. Mm-hmm. An open seat means that there is no incumbent. Congressman Seth Moulton, who has been representing the seat since 2014, has vacated the seat to primary Senator Markey. So truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with it being an open seat. And so that was a main reason why I jumped in. But in addition, not having a Republican primary is really special in that I get to focus on not only hopefully winning over the Republican votes, but really getting to connect with the 63% of the district that are independents, as well as many Democratic voters who I think may have, for example, voted for Governor Charlie Baker based on his fiscal policies. Mm-hmm. Those folks who I think will be at least intrigued or interested in the message that I'm bringing, which, if I can highlight my background, I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I served 5 years in the U.S. Army, predominantly in the 82nd Airborne Division out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
I have a friend who was in the 82nd
It's
Airborne
all-American and airborne all the way. Felt very lucky to serve in the 82nd. I did one tour in Afghanistan from 2014 to 2015, almost a year to the day, serving in different capacities there. But left the Army as a captain, and then after my wife and I moved to Massachusetts over a decade ago, I enrolled at Northeastern for law school, and after graduating law school, practiced for 6.5 years at the international law firm Morgan Lewis and their securities litigation practice, representing broker-dealer clients Merrill Lynch, Fidelity, Schwab, in high-stakes litigation, as well as investigations with the Securities Exchange Commission. And I highlight those experiences both in the military and kind of financial services industry practice, really a regulatory practice, and I want to come back to that, is why I think I have the resume, the skill set, and also the message I think was going to resonate with folks, particularly in the Mass 6th, and I think also in Burlington especially. And I want to touch base on that because I think Burlington really is part of a community that suburb north of Boston, a lot of professional class. We have the high tech corridor here close by. We have a lot of industry, a lot of lab space, and so I think a lot of the issues that are at that federal level are really going to affect Burlington in different ways.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So let's put a pin in that. Yeah. Come back and talk about that in a little bit. In this heavily Democratic delegation, what can you realistically think that you might accomplish in the first 2 years of being in office?
Yeah, so having been a taxpayer in Massachusetts for 10 years, and again, my family and I live in Essex, but we love the Greater North Shore, Merrimack Valley, and we spent a lot of time in Burlington.
Yeah.
For me, I personally feel that Massachusetts suffers. We have a one-party congressional delegation that, in my opinion, is less inclined to work across the aisle and engage with the administration or just engage with kind of the other side of the political aisle in a way that I think is beneficial for Massachusetts. Okay. I think that compared to, for example, I always like to cite Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Okay. Governor Gretchen Whitmer and President Trump disagree on all policy. Okay. But to Governor Whitmer's credit in particular, I think she has done a very good job in maximizing federal dollars back to Michigan and really connecting with the administration in a way that, she again disagrees with the administration, but she's doing what's best for Michigan, and sometimes that requires working with the administration, pushing back when it doesn't, but maximizing federal dollars back to Michigan. I personally don't feel that the Massachusetts congressional delegation has done that and has taken a resistance-only mindset, which I think has at times really hurt Massachusetts as a whole and our district in particular.
So speaking of national politics, so voters a lot of the time kind of feel torn between the national politics and the local realities. It's not always clear that in Washington, the conversations that are going on are really representative of the pain points that we're feeling here on the ground in the local municipalities. What do you think just pick one thing that you think that Washington is ignoring or not addressing sufficiently that impacts us at a local level here?
Mm-hmm. There are many. I think for Washington in particular and impacting us here at a local level, I think it really is understanding for Massachusetts in particular is using an across-the-board assessment for what cost of living is in different parts of the country. And I think that in Massachusetts in particular, I think you could say the same thing about other high-cost states, whether it's California, New York. I was just going to
say, we were just talking about us both having lived in California. I was in San Francisco, highest cost of living, and then we moved to Boston. Second highest cost of living. Cool.
So the example I want to cite here is that I'm a strong supporter of increasing the state and local tax deduction, the SALT deduction, which actually did with the working families tax cut that was passed last year, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill. They did increase that SALT deduction cap. Okay. In my opinion, however, I don't think they went far enough because, again, I think that Congress is looking at this is on paper what people need to have, be considered middle class, upper middle class, wealthy, et cetera. I don't think it takes into the reality of how expensive it is to live here in Massachusetts, and in particular the Mass 6 Congressional District, and even more specifically a town like Burlington. And so I think, especially when I look at what are the levers at the federal level that can really lower costs here in the district, and I think the SALT deduction is a great one because, it's like so much of our costs are state and local taxes. It's local property tax, and that's a state issue. I'm not able to affect that as a federal politician. But increasing that SALT deduction would allow you as a taxpayer to deduct the amount that you are spending in property tax, state tax from your federal income tax bill, which in Massachusetts would go such a long way. And I think that that'd be incredibly beneficial. So again, to go back to the point I just highlighted, being able to effectively articulate why that would be so helpful to Massachusetts voters, to the Mass 6 Congressional District, to Burlington residents in Washington as part of the delegation, especially when, as of now, you have a Republican-controlled Congress, and if they are the ones putting together that bill, to be able to say that, hey, no, you're not going far enough, and for my district, it'd be really beneficial to increase that SALT deduction.
You talk about local taxes. That is something that has been very salient in conversations in Burlington over the last couple of years, where we have a bunch of capital projects that are in various stages of being completed. We have a new elementary school that's being built to the tune of about $70 million. We have a new police station that's being built to the tune of about $40 million. And then a high school project that was squashed basically at our local election, a special election in November, because it was going to cost too much, right? I think it was $330 million that taxpayers were like, I don't know how I would be able to afford this, right? It was another, let's say, $1,100 on a tax bill when fully bonded. That's a lot. And I think that what you're mentioning about a deduction for state and local taxes could soften that blow a little bit for folks. All right. Well, speaking about costs, so we've got, groceries are costing more, gas is costing more, childcare is costing more. What is it that Congress can do to support the cost of living, as you were mentioning? You already mentioned the tax deduction, but what are some other levers that could be pulled to sort of ease the tension, and how would a Burlington family feel that?
Yeah, so this is where I think, and I just want to thank you again, Nikki, for the opportunity to have me on, and the fact that you are interviewing all of the Democratic candidates. I want to really remind the listeners that, again, this is an open seat, and I really encourage folks listening who are tuning in to to this podcast and to your network, in regards to the fact that whether it's me or one of my Democratic opponents, it's going to be a new face representing the district. And so I think it's really important for folks to hear us speak, hear our positions, and to kind of understand how we're focusing on making the district a better place. So I preface that as that I think when I look at how to lower costs, I'm a strong supporter of really trying to lower energy costs overall. And I think that especially in New England, in particular Massachusetts, I think that would be a huge way to lower costs. And what I mean by that, and although I am a strong supporter of continued innovation in green technology, I am also, I think, the most bullish candidate when it comes to nuclear energy in particular, as well as expanding the natural gas pipeline infrastructure that we have throughout New England. And I know there's been a lot of friction points at the state and local level when it comes to that, but I think Massachusetts is an importing state. And we export ideas, we export technology, we export innovation, but we import everything else. And so we are paying an additional cost when it comes to refrigeration for groceries, just your Amazon delivery. You're paying these extra costs and transportation and everything, and the heating bill after the winter we just had this past year, even though I know it's going to be a hot 4th of July weekend.
Well, there's an air conditioning bill coming too. So.
Exactly. But it's for me, it's if we can lower those energy costs at a level that is really going to be able to make a significant impact. And again, looking at it a triad. So it's I look at where can we fit in green and clean energy, but also being just honest with the amount of energy required. When energy costs, I think, and we're going to talk about AI here in a little bit, but artificial intelligence is requiring so much more as well. Yeah. I want Massachusetts to maintain its competitive edge. That's a big reason why I'm jumping in this moment. And I think that is, in order to do that, we need to be able to have the energy ecosystem available to support that. And so in expanding natural gas pipeline infrastructure, I would really want to work with regional, state, and local partners and be that conduit in order to provide greater infrastructure for not only Massachusetts, but New England as a whole. And then when it comes to nuclear energy, it's yes, very concerned, obviously, with 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. We have to be serious about that. However, I think with innovation, when it comes to small modular nuclear reactors, especially in a dense state like Massachusetts, a dense area like New England, having that new nuclear technology will really benefit our overall energy abundance and lower energy costs overall, which will help working families in Burlington.
Great. So still talking about cost, housing is another big concern everywhere, really. But, housing availability and housing cost are super huge. So young adults, when they're, exiting college, when they're starting to build a family, they can't afford to live where they grew up. And their parents, once they're ready to downsize, they can't afford to downsize. And so it kind of creates this choke point in the housing pipeline. It makes everything more expensive. There's no inventory. What can be done about this? What would you do at the at the national level in order to support housing costs that in a way that would really tangibly impact people here living in Burlington and in the 6th District?
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. And it's a very important, very salient question, and kind of want to break my answer down to 2 parts.
Okay.
So first, and this is a big part of my platform, I really encourage people to check it out, but I'm going to come back to this, but I really believe in trying to increase public service opportunities for young Americans that are outside of the military. And I'm going to tie this all together in that I've been very fortunate, having served in the U.S. Army for 5 years. Again, I got out as a captain, probably in the 82nd Airborne Division, and one tour in Afghanistan. But I felt so incredibly lucky after my service to use those post-service benefits, in particular the GI Bill to attend law school, as well as the VA home loan to put the down payment on my house. Mm-hmm. And I'm I'm the first to say, although I loved my military service, that military service is not for everybody. And so I really would like to see those type of benefits, GI Bill type benefits, VA home loan type benefits, for other types of public service, whether it was Peace Corps, Teach for America, AmeriCorps, City Year, as well as I'd love to see it bringing back the Civilian Conservation Corps. To me, I think we're at an inflection point in America, and I'm so worried that so many young Americans, I'm a millennial, I have a lot of Gen Zers interning with my campaign this summer, which are upping my social media game. Yeah. But I'm very worried just how discouraged and disaffected so many young Americans are. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes to the idea that they haven't had a chance to really serve their community, serve their country. And I think when you are able to do that, you come away with such an appreciation for how lucky we are to be born in the United States and to have the opportunities we have here. But that's really where, and to answer the question directly, is like, how do we think creatively in a way in order to either incentivize service, but really provide those type of benefits that have been so helpful to my family and me for a greater amount of folks? And so I think initially at the federal level, I would love to see whether it's through a particular program, a strong support like Small Business Administration, but like, where are access points where people can have additional access to capital in order to have that down payment for a house?
Right.
And so really, again, whether it's through a particular agency or government entity, to allow young people to be able to either have a lower cost loan, lower interest rate that would allow them to get that toehold that they need to build their foundation. But I really, why I started with the service side is that I really love the idea of incentivizing service to have a benefit at the end. I don't believe in just like giving away things for free without some sort of it's like I believe the young Americans should have to serve and give back and then be rewarded for that service, incentivized for that service. And so that's really something I would love to see. And obviously this is not an overnight thing. I think in the near term it's in kind of the second part of the question, at the federal level, where is there federal land, and kind of a partnership between federal and state authorities in which we could open up federal land that's not being utilized to allow for kind of expedited zoning for housing in areas. I think we forget just how much land the federal government owns, and how that could be potentially beneficial. Again, grants and access to capital in a way that is really tailored to the individual family or individuals in a way that they can access through administration. So I just want to think creatively about that and be in a position to be on that federal delegation that, again, can work across the aisle to really focus on those things that matter most for the district.
Great. And yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, you mentioned Teach for America. I sort of knew where that was going.
Fantastic.
Because I was in Teach for America.
Oh, fantastic.
Way back in 2004.
Wow.
And the reason that I'm not paying off my student loans anymore is because I had federal loan forgiveness through that program.
But you served. But I love, thank you for bringing that up, Nikki, because to me, it's like you served. It's like you and I served in different ways. I served in the military. You served a community. You served people who really needed your expertise, and you really changed the lives for the better of a lot of young Americans, young students, and I think that's incredible. And I wish more people had that opportunity. And Teach for America is incredibly competitive. It's an awesome program. I have many friends who did that, but I really I view your service in the same light of, it's like of you gave back and you took time out of your 20s, your career to do that, but you gave back and you made a difference in somebody's life. You made a difference in the country, and you should be. You should have the same opportunities that I had to advance your own career. Yeah,
and I think too, like, it's just more money in the economy, right? When there's more capital available for young people to buy a home, when there's less student loans because something like the GI Bill will pay for education, it's just more of an ability to contribute to the economy more quickly and to get into the housing life cycle more quickly if that's what people choose to do, which I think benefits the economy.
Yes.
Let's talk about AI and jobs then, because, people are nervous. People are worried that AI is going to usurp lots of different jobs. People are worried that AI is going to usurp lots of different jobs. We've got customer service and technology and just other industries where AI is trying to do the job that a human now does. What policies would you put in place or support to help workers, young people, seniors, anybody else who sort of is in this landscape of really uncertainty around AI?
Yes. No, thank you for the question. And I think we are in such, it's hard to actually capture just how dynamic of a moment that we are in. Yeah. The regulatory environment cannot keep up with the current momentum and just development that we're seeing.
Yeah,
It's
like every day there's a new thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
And something that I want to highlight, and I will. And I know I'm giving these wind-ups. I really appreciate the platform. I want folks to kind of understand where my perspective is. It's kind of where I'm focused on AI in particular is I'm very worried about it from a national security perspective, especially having been a soldier. And I look at what's happened as we've seen in Iran and Ukraine and really worry about AI from a national security perspective, because I do believe that we're in a Manhattan Project 2.0 when it comes to AI. And I find it, I think it is paramount that America maintains its qualitative military edge when it comes to AI, because I really view it, in the same way as the nuclear arms race, and that if we, the United States, were to lose that arms race when it comes to AI, we would be at a significant strategic disadvantage. To answer the question, though, for Burlington, I think it's really the responsibility of federal and state and local lawmakers to realize that AI is here to stay. And I think really encouraging folks of all different skill sets, all different backgrounds, to have the access of being able to understand what AI is, how to apply it in their career. But then also I would really like to see in the government, like at the federal level, whether it's the Small Business Administration as the example that comes to mind, it's like what are kind of either kind of open workshops, tutorials, pathways, apprenticeships in which AI is discussed directly, and that if it looks like an industry is going to be negatively affected by AI in a way, what are pathways in which people can have access to opportunities and understanding of the skill sets that they have, how it can be applied to in a new direction that may be shaped by AI, or to help people pivot from industries that may become obsolete because of AI, and to be very direct and direct and deliberate in trying to help American workers pivot into new industries in a way that is going to be, respectful to their career and also provide them with the next step and opportunity. So
how can Congress do that?
Yeah. So again, I keep coming to like Small Business Administration, but I would love to see, like, if I were on the federal delegation working with the SBA to talk to small businesses here in Burlington. There are so many small businesses in Burlington. There's a lot of large
businesses.
There's a lot of large businesses too, but I think like a lot of small businesses, and people forget that, like, remember, a restaurant's a small business.
Yeah.
There's so many.
I mean, small insurance agencies. There's dry cleaners. There's tailors. All sorts of different kinds of industries.
Correct.
Daycares.
Correct. And so I think that with the Small Business Administration, whether it is training seminars, whether it is webinars, whether it is like kind of in-person discussions, like who is the local SBA point of contact for Burlington, for the area, and how can whether it's via federal resources or having some sort of kind of a quarterly meeting. I say this from like a VA patient side, like where I've been involved in the federal agency I've interacted the most with, both as a former soldier and as an attorney, has been the Veterans Affairs Office. And it's like I've been to presentations that the VA has put on about these are the new developments in the VA. Uh-huh. I'd love to see something like that. And like for the SBA, Small Business Administration, it's like this is where AI currently stands. This is how we think it's affecting industries. These are training and courses that's available, paid for by federal dollars that people can access in order to help pivot their careers.
Got it.
Here are opportunities in which could be available to you.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Last big question before we have to kind of round it out for the day is about immigration. And Burlington has an immigration customs enforcement facility here. Lots of people have big opinions about it one way or the other. I'd love to know what your stance is on this particular facility, and what is it that Congress does have the ability to do versus what's local.
Yeah.
Control.
So let me actually start from that question, from how you finish it. What can Congress do? Mm-hmm. We are in a moment in time which Congress really needs to step up and do its job. Congress needs to engage in comprehensive immigration reform and do it in a deliberate, fair, humane, and transparent fashion. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I believe that I am somebody who I do not support illegal immigration. I think it's important to secure our border from a national security perspective. I also think we need to be very deliberate and have true due process via a surging of administrative law judges, other opportunities in which the folks who have been here, who may have come here illegally, but who have subsequently built their lives, now may have American children, are in a gray area, to say the least. that those are the folks who really are able to have due process and have a clear pathway in order to either apply for a green card or citizenship, or if it's determined via that due process to have to be able to kind of re-enter the immigration pathway. And I say this in the sense that although my legal, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of direct experience within the immigration, within the immigration advocacy side, and that although my law practice was focused on securities litigation, my pro bono practice, I did do a number of immigration cases, and including a green card case, start to finish, of a former Afghan colleague of mine who he and his family successfully immigrated to the United States. And settled in Texas, earned their green cards, and I saw firsthand as his attorney and just how convoluted, complex, and difficult that process was to do it correctly and to do it legally. So it gave me a deep appreciation for that. I think to answer the ICE facility and the ICE question, I think this is an issue that for 50 years, Congress has delegated, in my opinion, too much authority to the executive branch, regardless of administration. And I think with ICE in particular, ICE is being tasked to enforce immigration laws that are currently on the books. They are a law enforcement entity. And so it is up to Congress and we as citizens, if people are not happy with the current immigration law, then it's up to Congress to change those laws and to engage again in that deliberate immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, and not just blame the law enforcement agencies that's tasked with enforcing that law. So in the sense that I do support federal law enforcement, I think they are in a very challenging position. I also fully support the difference between state and federal entities and the fact that the federal government cannot demand that state authorities work with the federal immigration officers. I personally would like to see a greater coordination between state and federal in order to do the exchange of custody in a safe way so that it's not in the streets as we saw in Minneapolis at the start of the year. I think that creates a dangerous situation for everybody involved, people who are protesting and the ICE officers trying to enforce the immigration law, as well as the individual who's being apprehended. I think being able to do that change of custody, whether in a courthouse or the ICE facility in a secure way, is safer for everyone. But to be clear, it's like I do believe in the difference between state and federal rights, and the federal government cannot demand that Massachusetts law enforcement help them with immigration enforcement. I want to make that very clear. So all that being said, I think this really comes back to Congress doing its job. And again, the importance of having more than one voice in that congressional delegation, in which I would hope to act as that liaison between town of Burlington, Massachusetts 6th Congressional District, Massachusetts, and the federal government, and in particular articulate that, yes, I understand what the current administration's policies are when it comes to immigration, and the tactics and techniques that may work in Texas is what's going to work here in Massachusetts, and can we find some sort of compromise to do this in a way that's best for our communities?
So, the difference between federal law enforcement versus housing people in a facility that's not meant to house people. That is another question that I think, and that's really the big sticking point for folks who are protesting that facility. And I think that part of it is due to the fact that with the newer immigration laws and the kind of ramp up of ICE activity, there's just more people in the system. And what do you do with those people when you've got, I'm just making up numbers here, but when you have 100 appointments in a day and you only have time to get through 80 of them, like where do those other 20 people go? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there's a big tension between that. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I mean, I think it's just being state and federal authorities need to communicate. And so when they kind of are refusing to communicate with each other, that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help, and it particularly doesn't help the people who are being directly affected by those policies. And so I think that's where it's up to state authorities and the federal being like, we need to make sure that we have the humane conditions for people who are being detained, and and to have a deliberate process in which either they will be able to stay in the country or be deported, but to do it in a fair, deliberate, humane way. And I feel very strongly about that. And so it's up to, I think, again, when Massachusetts is in the crosshairs of the administration, that doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't help. It doesn't make it easy for the federal law enforcement who's been tasked by Congress to enforce this law and by the administration. It doesn't help the state authorities who are trying to keep the peace locally and who are in a friction point with the federal officers, federal agents. And then it doesn't help the town, and it doesn't help the state, and it doesn't help the feds. It's like, I think that's where more dialogue is important, more transparency is important, and then also not forgetting that we really need to make sure that we're doing this in a humane and respectful way.
All right, we are nearing the end of our time here together today. I would like to let you use this opportunity to close with, what is your most important issue, Micah Jones, as a congressional candidate, and how will you kind of act on that issue in a way that's going to be visible to people in Burlington and in the 6th District?
Yeah, so if I fortunate enough to represent the district and I could, wave the magic wand and get anything done. I mean, I think it's highlighting, again, like just increasing the public service opportunities. I really admire you having served in Teach for America. I really believe that the more that young Americans have an opportunity to serve, the better they'll be personally, and also our communities and our country will be. But I think a big thing, encourage folks to check out my platform. I'm really focused on
tell us what your email all of your info.
Yeah, so please, if you all be interested in learning more about me, please visit micahqjones.com, MICAHQJONES.com, to learn more about who I am, my background, and my platform. But my campaign's based on 3 core pillars: accountability for members of Congress, opportunity for the greater communities in the North Shore and Merrimack Valley, and security for the country. But that first one, accountability for members of Congress, this, I think if I get one thing done day one, and I know some of the Democratic candidates are talking about it too, which I think is great, is preventing members of Congress from trading individual stocks. And I feel very strongly about that, having just come from a securities litigation background in which both my wife and I were prevented from trading individual stocks since I started practicing at the firm. To me, that was a bipartisan issue. It's an issue that has absolutely gotten out of hand on both sides. And I think that's something that, in this moment in which the country is so fractured, so polarized, I think we can agree on that. And that's what I'd like to focus on day one.
Wonderful. Micah Jones, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners, stay tuned for more interviews with congressional 6th District candidates. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Really appreciate the opportunity.